First, just a quick look at what I am going to talk about today. Can you guys hear me? I forget I have two mics on. Okay. I'm just going to go over the agenda real quick, talk about the goals and themes of the meeting since we started here on Monday, what the general goals were, the general themes, where I think we can take this next, ask that all-important question, what's in it for me? And then I'll do a little soothsaying, if you will, or looking into the crystal ball and tell you what I think is coming down the road and where I'll need your help. First of all, I know it is not typically the thing to do to start a presentation by thanking everybody, but I have been truly impressed with the camaraderie, the respect, the humor, but that's self-serving on my part, but also the work that we do every day. And looking at the sheer volume of representation of all of our organizations, whether they be federal, state, local, international, academia, I'm going to forget somebody, associations, has been amazing, and the amount of work we do to protect public health. So I'd like you all to take a round of applause for each other. In this crazy world we live in, I think we often forget to thank ourselves and one another frequently, so I wanted to make sure we did that. For the time that you've spent here, I want to thank you for your time here. I recognize that for many of you, this is a second, if not a third, or maybe a fourth job that you've added, either mostly voluntarily. Some might have been voluntold. That's probably my staff in the back. But we certainly want to thank you for the time that you have given to this particular project, as well as your commitment and engagement here today. And the process clearly requires us to be engaged, and you have certainly done that well. When we started on Monday, we've used this slide throughout the 2.5 days. I wanted to show it to you because it captures the idea of a concept that we had back in 2009 and how we applied it to our day-to-day work products and how we've evolved our thinking about the concept of a curriculum. I can't tell you how tickled pink I am that some of the FDA folks in the room now understand the difference between a training course and a curriculum. I'd be in meetings with them and they'd say something and I'd go. So I am tickled pink that we've got that, even just that terminology straight, but certainly also that we've been able to take this concept and move it forward to an actual curriculum document that we have today. We set this meeting up with some very specific pieces to focus on the integrated food safety system. I know when we first started and we announced a summit, we had lots of discussions about what should be at the summit. It was very hard managing expectations, I will tell you, in order to be able to make it clear what we were trying to do with an integrated food safety system in order to achieve the goals. This slide is also a general outline of the meeting we held over the last 2.5 days, but it also serves as a guide for what a training organization might look like in an integrated food safety system. You have a system that needs support by training, that is the integrated food safety system. You designated personnel or folks as responsible for that training. We've talked about the Partnership for Food Protection, the Training and Certification Work Group, all of you all in this room. Sorry, Stan. As being the ones that were, we talked about standards, the standards that you want the training to meet in order to be consistent across all of those, and the process for building that training, and that's the curriculum framework. And then we talked about, now that you've built it, now that folks have come to the training, how do we make sure that the course is on target? And we talked about evaluations and quality. We walked through almost all of this in 2.5 days, and during subsequent summits, we will dig into each of these topics. And from the from the discussions we've had, certainly there are lots of other topics that we can have for future summits. We heard many of them today, and I know the quality discussion will continue as well, as another example. So if I were to look forward to looking ahead to the future summits, we will be reinforcing many of these ideas. And many of those ideas that started with these two documents. We finally refer to, where's my pointer? We finally refer to the picture on the right. Wait, is that the peacock or the turkey? Wait, which one is that? It looks a little bit like the NBC peacock. But we obviously started this journey with those two documents. And if you really want to see how far we've come and how much information we've accomplished, then I would suggest you take a look at the vision document address there and look at how much really has been accomplished in a period of time. And a lot of that time being on folks' volunteerism. The vision document for the PFP endorsed a goal to develop and implement a national food safety training system that provides the knowledge and skills needed to perform job functions to regulators and public health partners at all levels. The curriculum framework, Melissa, you can be Vanna. The curriculum framework and the development process we reviewed over the last 2.5 days is bringing this vision and represents the evolution of the ORA training curriculum, the investment of resources in our future, and the endorsement of standards. And speaking of emergency thoughts or evolution in thinking, I think it's worth taking a little bit of time to look back in the background of how we got here. The vision document in 2009 was a new way of looking at training from a more global standpoint. For us to advance in the goal, we included goals and themes and what we were talking about over the last 2 days. Mel started out the presentation by telling us that we started out by working through what is it we want you to do differently. A strategy for training evaluation, initiating a plan to meet ORA's executive strategy. They established for us some very challenging goals, and it's taken me a long time to recognize challenges are opportunities. We need a strategy for training evaluation, looking for opportunities to better prepare and evaluate the effectiveness of our instructors to help ensure better learning events, to look for opportunities to leverage our training resources, for IFSS partners to share training portfolios, and in the process, find ways to leverage our own training portfolios, to finding gaps and overlaps in those systems and training programs, and ultimately establishing those metrics that we need to show that effectiveness of training occurred and learning occurred. These are great expectations that we have for building a system to meet, and that system is the Integrated Food Safety National Curriculum Framework. The system will help FDA meet these expectations. Not only will it help FDA, it will help DHRD to meet these expectations, and will help the PFP in the challenge and charges of building a curriculum in an integrated food safety system. We constructed this summit to be but one in a series, to be able to meet with our executives' expectations. The summit lays the groundworks, and over the next years, we intend to report on progress in our ability to use the standards and products that were outlined in the summit, and we hope you as our partners will also see the value in having common standards and approaches, because this will help us have common expectations as we move towards endorsing courses and understanding the meaning behind that endorsement and have a common language. The training summit was also designed to meet the PFP goal of curriculum construction. Although the goal of building a complete curriculum will take years. Melissa, we're only showing where we are in the curriculum right now. See that lovely beige color? It will take years. But we hope that you have a clear picture of the approach we are endorsing and are considering the question, how will you use this curriculum framework to your advantage? FDA will be using the National Curriculum Standard in the following ways. It'll serve as a content standard as it engages our partners to help construct and reconstruct training, that continuous improvement aspect we've talked so much about. It'll serve as a quality standard. We will look into the competencies at the standard for training products that we create, building against those job competencies so that we are helping that employee do their job well and effectively. We will use it as a training needs analysis. The National Curriculum Framework will provide a convenient way to conduct a training needs analysis. Now that we know what the job is, now that we know what the competencies are, it is a bit easier to start saying, what do we need to develop in new training programs and what do we need to offer currently. The depth and scope of the competencies are identified and described in this framework. Those books on the library shelf, if you will. I'm old school. I haven't figured out how to use my iPhone for music yet. Something about that cloud confuses me. We will also look for gaps and overlaps. We can use the curriculum framework as it evolves. We know we will find areas that our portfolios have not addressed. We expect that. We also know we may find areas where we've addressed it too much and need to say, here's some expectations, here's what we have, let's move on to some other things. That we should be able to invest our energy and time in other areas. We will use it as a library of training available. It's that library shelf again, but as you know, there is more to that shelf. It doesn't just hold the training. The shelf has competencies to measure performance in that competency area. And ultimately, we will use that framework to help support career paths under the Food and Drug Administration's program alignment. As you know, FDA has a major organization-wide initiative called Program Alignment. We see this framework fitting nicely in the initiative because it sets the standards and outlines a pathway with various levels that can support a career path. And career paths are one of the expectations under program alignment. DHRD will also use the NCS, almost said NCIS, no, the NCS, the National Curriculum, to conduct training needs analysis. The NCS identifies the training in terms of content and quality so that the standard allows training providers to make informed decisions about the training they construct or purchase to meet the needs of their students. DHRD will also look at the standard as it engages all of our partners, contractors, cooperative agreement grants, et al. Design, develop, and deliver training. One of the outcomes we are hoping for is that you will also look at this standard to evaluate your training programs. We also really hope that you've not only learned more about the construction process, those exercises were there to help too, but also have ideas about how you will use the curriculum framework to your own advantage. So by sharing these ideas to advance the vision for developing a national curriculum standard for training in an integrated food safety system using smart practices and adult learning, as well as socializing this standard curriculum development process and addressing, or at least identifying, the need for quality training and a standard to help us advance our public health mission and to collaborate with our partners. Those themes that we discussed earlier, the team that developed this training program had these various themes. We asked you to think differently. While we were using our Jeopardy music and our turning point clickers, that's not it, but you know what I mean. We asked you to think differently on how you would frame a curriculum. We talked about job roles, definitions, terminologies, competencies, topics and courses, trainers, and methods of delivery. And on every one of them, you all thought differently. We asked you to think differently on attitudes. Food safety culture was discussed throughout the last 2.5 days. We want to address the A in attitudes, in knowledge, skills, and attitudes as we move forward in building curriculums and courses. We do a good job on the knowledge side of our education and training, but the attitudes are more challenging. And we're not talking the attitudes of your teenagers. Different. With FSMA, there is an expectation that we reinforce productive behaviors and attitudes. We can do this by thinking differently and by embracing a food safety culture. We also had a theme of resources and investment into the future. When Mel provided her opening remarks, she acknowledged that the curriculum framework and the National Curriculum Standard is an investment in our future. It will take time, effort, and for me, a lot of hair dye. It is new and an exciting approach that has produced tangible products such as the curriculum framework. And now we are ready to begin the design and development of training products. I'll talk a little bit more about this as I go through my presentation. This is a call to action. Consider ways you can get involved, and I do have those turning point results that tell me how many of you are going to volunteer. With respect to what I'm about, to be able to volunteer. We know this is an evolutionary process. When I was hired in this position, Steve Solomon and Mel Plaisir told me I needed to think differently. We have done that. This is an evolutionary process. Mel addressed that in her opening remarks. We know we are building our history and evolving our training programs using smarter practices and industry best practices. But an evolution takes time and multiple iterations to get to a current state that is different than where we are now. Also, because this is an evolutionary process, it's not static. So as a dynamic process, it will continue to evolve as we move further into the curriculum framework. I want to stop here for a second and also acknowledge that we have spent 2.5 days talking about a curriculum framework that is our future. And at the same time, we're still trying to keep up with the current. We have FSMA regulations, which I don't know what to call if it's not the current and if it's not the future, it's kind of like the near future, I guess. We obviously have FSMA regulations that have to be implemented and a larger workforce to train. And at the same time, we're also getting resources and we're hiring new staff who need to be trained on what is going on in the world right now with respect to regulation and inspections and how to do things and how to analyze lab samples and do compliance jobs. And so we are literally have one foot in the now and one foot in the future. And those sometimes end up being conflicting messages, but we have to be able to have one foot in both in order to move forward. We also talked about standards. One of the things that I learned very quickly in this position is that the old way of doing business, of putting stuff that sounded good, this is Pat Alcock speak, stuff that sounded good on PowerPoint because it's how I did my inspections, and talking at people isn't training. It's also not measurable to any standard. Now, I like to think my standards are good, and because I said so, it's important, but I don't think that that is something that's reproducible. And so one of the things that we have learned, I learned very quickly here, is that how do you know, Lonnie always says this to me, how do you know you've reached a particular need if you don't have that particular standard? And I am quite supportive of and pleased to hear folks in this room over the last 2.5 days talk about the need for standards. and recognizing that in order to bring everybody up to the same level, we have to have those standards. It just can't be because so-and-so trained me 20 years ago and that's the way it is. And especially if we're trying to work under an integrated food safety system. The training products that we develop to those standards will in turn reinforce career performance standards and help identify knowledge and performance gaps so that we can help our employees do better and continuously improve. Last, there are intangibles that we can all take away from this meeting, and that's been the networking that has been going on here. The folks who work on these competencies, and who will work on these competencies, have built a strong professional network, and we're hoping for other folks will join in and participate. We also now have shared goals and visions. By participating in this process, or as Jonathan calls it from CFIA, drinking the Kool-Aid. I couldn't quite get your O though, Jonathan, sorry. And we can help to build the standard, and you help to build the future of the integrated food safety system and prepare for a lasting legacy. What's in it for me? This sounds good, I know you're thinking, but what do I take back to my organization? What do I tell them? The intangibles of this meeting make the meeting valuable. But if we can take the content and ideas to a broader audience, you are their representatives after all, and apply them to our work products, we can have an even more enduring impact on the goal of a competent and comparable workforce. Applying this approach to curriculum design, evaluating training, and preparing for and qualifying our instructors will show we are adopting smart practices. The National Curriculum Standard provides a way to measure quality and content. We can invest training resources more confidently as we also identify gaps and overlaps in training programs. Let me take a moment here and address some of the quality issues. Yesterday we talked about quality and we had some discussions, and up until this point, even in the vision document, the document talks about ANSI accreditation, IACID accreditation, ISO accreditation as examples of quality standards. We are not in a position at this point to be able to say, we know those three exist, we know that they have measures that we can at least recognize as being high and important standards. One of the future training summits and collaborative efforts that we will need to address as an organization, as an organization under IFSS, is how do we make sure we have that quality across the different people who are developing and designing training. It's not to say that ANSI or IACID or ISO are the only options out there. There were some price tag discussions yesterday that may have floored some folks. I get it, but I think we have to figure out how do we make sure there's quality built in. The last thing we don't want is for me, I'm going to give you an example. Last thing we don't want is for the Pat Alcocks of the world to take a look at that curriculum and say, I work for FDA. I can teach on juice HACCP. I know how to spell it. Let me put up a Pat Alcock training organization and tell everybody that I'm FDA approved and start training. Because that will diminish the importance of that framework, and obviously, while making me some money, might not necessarily be the best approach. And so we have to make sure there's a quality factor in there. We just haven't figured out which ones it will be. We have made our best recommendations in the vision document from 2009, saying what we know, what is out there. And obviously things progress. Fair enough?
Fair enough.
Thank you. We also know that the National Curriculum Standard provides us a roadmap for the development with a target on training. We no longer have folks saying, well, how do you know? Where do we go? What do I do? We have a roadmap. And we have a network of partners to help assure a competent and comparable regulatory workforce through engagement and enactment of national standard development and adoption. We also will have an endorsement of learning events. Meeting standard learning events will be endorsed as we continue to move forward with the integrated food safety system expectations. And hopefully, you will be leaving with some additional wins from this meeting and from your work with the curriculum and course evaluation instruments. Consider the question that we hope you will take home with you: how will you use this to your advantage? We included a lot of exercises in this event because we wanted to make sure it was an active process and because there's a lot of activity on the horizon. Some of the activities on that horizon include the following. Included curriculum exercise. This was designed to get you acquainted with the framework and the competencies, so you can start to think about how you can use it to your advantage. We had an exercise on training evaluation, and the turning point exercises was designed to have you start to change your thinking about evaluations. We reinforced this later in the program with a presentation by OPM and some examples of levels of evaluation using Donald Kirkpatrick's model. Again, trying to enforce the idea of thinking differently about evaluations. We had a course evaluation exercise designed to get you to think about your training portfolio from a critical standpoint. We evaluated a mock course, but the exercise in the instrument should provide you with a new way of looking at evaluating your training courses. And we talked of training portfolios. We chose questions for this exercise and discussions to get you to think more critically about how you're building and delivering your training, how you can relate your training portfolios to the curriculum framework, and where we can collaborate and leverage as we build an integrated food safety system. Currently, we are at the design and development phase of the general education level, and we will be looking for current and additional participation as we move forward with the development of training towards these standards. I recently saw some email exchange where people said, well, why am I getting asked this survey again? I already did this last year. What does this matter? The reality is, as we go from those general eds and get deeper into those competency statements and discussions that we've touched on this last two and a half days, and as we go up the technical aspect of that curriculum, we're going to need more and more information. We're going to need more access to SMEs. We're going to need them to be able to help us to further define and refine that curriculum framework and put those books on the right shelves. Jerry mentioned before I got up here of the work that has been done to find the SMEs for those general education credits. Let me show you the work plan for the work that those 140 to 176 people are doing. This is all Craig. This is the proposed calendar of work on the national curriculum for fiscal year 16. As you can see, or maybe not see, but there is a lot of work. That is, how many months? 12? 4? 6? What was that? Don't do public math? What was that? And it begins, this is the general education work and begins to get us ready for that second level of the curriculum framework. Not only does this show us there's a lot of work to do, but it shows the investment in time and resources that will take to complete it. This is a true call to action for all of us. DHRD, PFP, IFPTI, and others will be reaching out to folks to participate in a lot of projects, and we hope you're willing to answer the call for action and help build this legacy. Speaking of legacy, not only will you be leaving your mark on the curriculum and the integrated food safety system, but you will be able to network and share ideas with your colleagues and find more opportunities to leverage resources. To help with networking and engaging colleagues, DHRD's Wilbet Syed will be uploading documents, presentations, and video clips from the training summit. Please watch for this message from Will in your mailbox. With respect to resources, something we have to consider is access to training portfolios. We have resources available, but we need to think about how we can better assure we're getting those resources to the hands, brains, and fingertips of our students so that they're meeting with the vision of competent and comparable workforces. I think the exercise pointed out some challenges and opportunities in this area, and we may be asking folks to work together to help through some of the challenges and to build networking opportunities. Did I just... talk a little bit about the approval process. We want to be able to have a course, learning event, and endorsement process. And again, this is another collaborative area that we'll be looking for assistance. As a participant in the Integrated Food Safety System National Curriculum, ORI wants to have a course endorsement system in place and look to build that endorsement process. Although it will take a little while to work through, we think that this level of recognition is important as our commitment to the national standard. The endorsement work may require a committee to review and stamp the courses. So I want to reiterate that this is a call to action, and there will be committees, ad hoc and standing, that we may be asking folks to participate on in the next several months and years. Some of this work may include participating in guiding course construction and curriculum construction. As a matter of fact, we have a way of getting you involved now. This training and summit included a lot of activities and many opportunities to get involved. That was on purpose. We want you to be active and keep you thinking about the various actions that we need your assistance with. Where's my music? Here's your call to action. We need you to become involved and invested in this integrated food safety curriculum. Ways you can become involved: you will get messages from IFPTI asking for SMEs to assist in curriculum development. They collaborated with that with AFTO. Assist in the planning and organization of the next training summit. We've got the plan already figured out. I can just hand it to you. We can serve on the curriculum executive committees, curriculum governance committees, or a course committee that we will need to stand up in order to move these curriculums forward. Participate in the next training summit as an attendee, or identify somebody else from your organization to participate in the next training summit. I want to thank you for participating in the 2015 Training Summit. I also want to take a moment and thank my staff for their hard work, dedication, a couple of trips to the ER, long days and nights in the planning of this. From the development and design of, I'm on the move. No. From the development and design of the Training Summit logo, to the color of the tablecloths on your rented tables, to how many tables we can actually fit in this room, to whether or not the coffee pots worked. And who was paying for the coffee because we couldn't pay for it in federal money. To, what else am I forgetting? Candy on the table came out of the pockets of the DHRD folks, was not procured with federal funds. To the design of this very pretty book. Where's the operations people? I'm giving the IOM a run for its money. To the determination of invites, the following up, second notices, reminders for RSVPs, hotel reservations, to a little problem we had with travel and a new travel system a month before the fiscal year end, where some of you may not have thought you were going to even get a flight to visit. Transportation to and from the hotel. What else? Most, if not all of this, would not have been feasible without the direct leadership of Dr. Tim Hughes. Tim, you've earned your puppy. Actually, I ordered Tim to take leave and go to Disney World. I wasn't fired, but I told him he had to go to Disney World. No more trips to the ER. All right. Thank you again, and I'm going to turn it over to Brooke for your last and final request before you leave here. Thank you.